This is the Where We End Up podcast, and I'm your host, Jay Drew Silvers, and I'm here with my friend Lauren. Also goes by, I've always wondered, and I think I've heard you say it before, but the actual phonetic of it is Xtwii. That's your handle, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, because I had no idea until I actually heard you say that in like a story post a long time ago, if that was actually how you said that, because it should have been phoneticized in my brain, but I don't process that way sometimes. Basically, we've known each other for quite a while. She's a creator and she has a good backstory. And I just wanted to kind of talk to her and relate in the best ways that we possibly can because we have known each other for a long time, but we have never met in person until just now. There was apparently years ago, she's already laughing.
Yep.
There was apparently an opportunity years ago at a mainstream gym show that we went to in Tucson, Arizona. We were there at the same time, and so what was that? What exactly?
So that was very new for me going to gem shows. And when you come to a gem show, there are just so many things going on and such like big personalities, and you're not really sure how to go up to people that are, essentially strangers on the internet. So when I recognized you, it seemed strange to just be like, I know you. So I didn't, but we made eye contact because I think we both were like, all right, we know who this person is. But then I didn't know how to approach you, so I kept walking. And then later on, it was like creepy, but I saw you today, so nice to kind of meet you, I guess. And that was it.
That's like the whole like online, like if you have any sort of presence and you go somewhere that's like directly involved in your niche, that's kind of what you're at. And like that's just the experience that you have. And I remember that too. Like I remember just out of the corner of my eyes, like I think I know, but I don't know. I don't want to be weird. And then it was just kind of like passed by, and then you at least had the gall to DM me and be like,
Well, if it wasn't you, I think that would have been worse because, you just go up to someone and you're like, I know you. And then it's an entire stranger.
yeah.
So I think that was my mindset at the time. I was like, if it's not him, that's even worse. So
Because when I went there the first time, I was completely by myself, so literally knew nobody, and that was an entirely different like world to me. And like you said, that was like one of your initial kind of contacts in that sort of sequence, right? That was
yeah.
you were kind of just figuring things out, and I was figuring things out. And we didn't know that because we didn't even know each other was going to be there. So that was just kind of an awkward, like, oh, okay. And then you meet for the first time today, and now we're doing a podcast together. So that's fun. Um, so basically, I you have an interesting to me at least, and I think a lot of other people because there are a lot of people that kind of start in the same way that you did because in some ways I kind of started in a similar industry in a way, though it wasn't my full-time occupation. It was something that I did, and it's something that a lot of people do, but it's um, dealing with kitchen or fine dining or serving in general to the public, anything that's on that hospitality end that has to do with food. And the most the most interesting people that I can still tell stories about and that I can still think in some like indiscreet maybe way shaped my thought process and my life were the people that I met when I was working at restaurants or adjacent to fine dining. The characters that you meet are just they're unbelievable. Like it's hard to describe because they're like their own like subculture that
Oh, absolutely.
and it's just you always have like and there's all these rules and I wanted like it has to be the same because the first place I ever worked I was a server, so I've never actually worked in a kitchen, but I've always been adjacent. I've done expo type stuff, I've done serving and all of that without actually being in the kitchen because our rule at the first place I worked was there's actually a line on the ground and you do not cross that if you do not work in this kitchen.
Yeah, that's definitely. I mean, if you are not a line cook or a chef, there is absolutely no reason for you to be behind the pass. Pretty much,
Yeah.
that's just kind of a standard rule. There's no reason for anyone else to be back there.
Right.
Even the servers that I did get along with, like they never went back there. But there is a lot of like strong personalities in that industry in general, especially. in the back of the house.
Right.
So it can be a little off-putting, especially people who just come into it, because it's like, you come in and then there are these people who just have these ways of talking immediately, almost like they just know you
Right.
already.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh yeah, that's like because we had the ability like there's a set of rules, but if anybody breaks those rules, it's not the people on the outside of that line, it's the people that exist in the kitchen. They're allowed to break the rules.
Yes, all the
They're
time.
exactly they're allowed to cross that line because when we were because where I was initially was a steakhouse as a server as doing some expo stuff, but there was like you walk into the kitchen and the first thing on your left is the salad station where you just make the salad stuff, and sometimes the people that were on the grill or the head chef or the KM or whatever, the kitchen manager, they would be like, get your own damn salad, like the chit's right there, pull it off the printer and you do the salad, but otherwise it's like, wait, I didn't think I was allowed to be here.
Yeah, yeah. And it is kind of like that, where, if service is going super smooth, then it has the flow and, nobody else who doesn't touch the food or anything doesn't have to intervene.
Hmm.
However, when stuff starts going crazy, because, not every service is going to be smooth, sometimes you just like look at somebody and a lot of us refer to it as lizard brain. Like it's no longer like, hey, would you mind going to go get that salad? It's like salad, go now. And it's strictly just that.
Ah, okay.
And in that instance, it's like, if you've been there long enough, you know that you can look at somebody and say, you know what to do. You've seen me do it 1,000 times, so go get your own fucking salad.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That was the vibe that I got because like our grill guy, that was his thing. He was on the grill all the time. He was the steak guy. He
Hmm.
wasn't the head chef, but he was the steak guy. And he knew the grill, he knew the steaks, and you didn't come near there. Even if you were in between your shifts and there was nobody in the restaurant and you were like shut down for that, post lunch rush time, you weren't allowed to touch his grill. You don't go there.
No.
Even if he's not in the building, he'll find out, he'll look at it and be like, who touched my grill?
Oh yeah, no, we all had like specific sets of like tongs, spoons, even rags. Like I had like my own like stack of rags that went at my pass, and nobody touched those. And I had them counted, so if somebody
Oh.
took one, I knew.
Oh god. That's intense. Like that's exactly the environment that I remember. And there always seems to be like and so I worked in the steakhouse and then I moved into a different job entirely. I worked at a golf course which was a private golf course
Hmm.
which had full amenities and everything, like everything that you would expect from a country club environment, which um when I initially got there, it was fully private and there were like minimums that you had to spend in every department. If you remember, like you had I think it was small. I think it was like a $40 food minimum every
Yeah.
month or something that you had to hit. And so when I got there initially the first year, it was very much on a fine dining scale. Le Cordon Bleu trained chef and Le Cordon trained chef de cuisine and all of that. Like everybody had their place and they'd been there for at that point over a decade probably.
Oh yeah.
And the servers were lifers. Like that was what they did. They were hospitality people. They were really good at it, and they never came in disheveled. They came in with their chef whites were pressed, and then the servers had all their stuff pressed and everything. It was very like this is my career. Like this is what I do.
Yep.
And then we had like our course was bought out by a different company and then they relaxed things, and that was such an interesting dynamic because the lifetime hospitality server folks that were in there were like, I don't want to deal with something if it's not fine dining, so they skipped out and they went closer to the city and went back into other restaurants that were fine dining, but then we still had fine dining chefs and stuff in the back, and they're like, what the hell do we do now? Like you're like, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's interesting. The clubs that I worked for, they were all private. I never
Mhm.
worked for a public or like, a half and half club at
Right.
all. So it was really interesting because the difference between like servers in a private club versus a public restaurant is the fact that they get like the same, most of them get the same percentage of gratuity.
Right.
So you have these lifers because they know exactly what they're going to make. They know these members.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's a lot more difficult to be in these environments versus being in a public restaurant setting because you're cooking for the same people, the
Yeah.
same 100 people every single day, and you have to remember all of these tiny little things that they want with their food.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting that like people do end up staying as long as they do because you think that they would get bored, but it's actually it's very like high volume, high intense like thinking.
Yeah.
When you have to keep those people entertained.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like you said, it's consistency because that's how it was initially for our servers too. It was an automatic 20% gratuity that went on every bill. And they know like on Tuesdays, the points people are going to come out to the club and they're going to play, or the bridge ladies are coming on Wednesday morning to play bridge. And we know that they're going to have light stuff. So we're not going to make as much off of that.
Yep.
Two servers can work that room because there's only like 20 people, like that kind of thing. They know like everything's kind of set in a pattern. And they're like, okay, if I take this shift, then I'm going to be perfectly fine this week, you know.
Oh yeah.
That's how it kind of always works. And you know at that point, like, how to schedule kitchen and everything like that. And that's something that I did like about the consistency of that job. But after a while, because I was on the other end, I was on the actual golf end, like in the service part of that. Actually, you know, communicating with members when they come in and stuff like that, when they're gonna play golf, not necessarily go into dining, but the patterns, like me and the guy who worked with me every single day, he was essentially like my assistant at the time, we knew everything. Like we knew where everything was supposed to go. We knew which ladies were coming to play the ladies play. We knew which couples were coming. We knew, you know, the MGA guys, the old people, like whoever. It's all, and you can expect like the servers would always come in and they'd interact with us and be like, hey, you know, where are these people? How much longer do they have? And then you'd look it up in the system and figure out they're probably on this hole. They're going to be back in like an hour and a half.
Oh yeah, and you end up having like actual like, nicknames for these groups
Oh yeah,
too that you never tell them.
no,
But
no, and
yeah,
you don't put it on the tickets and you don't tell them, but internally you all know like who shithead is.
yep, yeah.
Yeah, and there is one in every like formal like whatever type situation. There's always like a group where everybody's like,
Oh yeah, you see the mood entirely shift and change the second that person like comes in and you know that their name's coming in, and if their wife's there it's even worse and
oh yeah,
whatever.
uh-huh.
So
Completely understand. And like, but I'll say this though, some of the most creative people, and this is where we're going to segue into more about you and your experience and your life and all of that, is some of the most like, there's like a dynamic between, there's a lot of people that are just like off in left field and outer space in that industry, and then there's a lot that are just super creative that are in it. I've never seen it in anything else. Like the servers that I dealt with where I was a server were that way. Like they were all like, a lot of them were artsy types and they just did it as more of like not necessarily a stepping stone to get into that as a full-time thing and like leave that industry, but more like, this is how I decompress, is I do this stuff to ease my brain, and if I make a little extra cash off of it, that's fine too. And it was the same way in the country club setting. The servers that came in were always, they loved their job and they loved the consistency, and they were all very good at it, or they wouldn't have been there as long as they were. But they all had like some extra little thing that really kept them going, and more often than not, it was something creative.
yeah.
It was either something super creative or it was a lot of partying.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, in the restaurant industry in general, there is a lot of partying that goes on. A lot of people just go out for drinks afterwards, and it's hard because you don't have the only people who understand you are the people who are in it. So it's hard to sit down with people who aren't in any sort of like restaurant or food industry setting. So you have these weird hours. You don't have a consistent sleep schedule most of the time. So who else is going to understand you when you're talking about these things?
Yeah.
It's those people. But you can't do that all the time. I mean, it's not good.
No.
And so people do find other things to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you end up in that industry, and that became like your passion and your love? And I know it's still a part of you because you still do private stuff occasionally, but how did you go from that to taking that turn and it being like, okay, I'm really gonna push for, do you still call it the Bones of Hydra also?
It's only Xtwii now. The Bones
It's
of
on-
Hydra has been retired.
It's been retired officially? Okay.
Yep.
So it's all Xtwii. So how was the transition from, let's start like, you started in that industry and it became where you were for a long time, and then you eventually transitioned into what you have become today as a creator that is also self-employed.
So, I thought that I would never be anything but a chef. And the problem that I've always had is I like to overwhelm myself and absorb myself in all of these things that I'm interested in.
Mhm.
So, food, culinary, menu writing, wine tastings, that was my life. I did nothing else. And unfortunately, when you do things like that, you burn yourself out
Yes.
really, really quick.
Hmm.
And that was my problem. I wasn't healthy. I wasn't mentally okay. There were a lot of just things going on outside of my job, and it was to the point too. I was in a salaried position, so it didn't matter if I
Oh,
was there, 5 hours or 10 hours. I made the same that week and
or
whatever.
80.
Yeah, and most of the time it was that. It was
Right.
never, unless it was like slow season, in which case I was still working 45 hours, which never really made up for those 80-hour weeks.
No.
So I needed to find something to do that didn't involve food
Right.
because I could not. I reached a wall where I felt like even the stuff I was writing or the things I was talking about weren't connecting anymore. Like there was a lack of passion almost. So instead of going home and reading articles on food and flipping through cookbooks and writing this menu and thinking about this, I started like just doing some simple things. Like I think I started with wire wrapping, but I also ended up getting absorbed in this idea of like, oh my gosh, I enjoy doing this. I enjoy making things with my hands. I used to paint when I was a kid too, so I've always had like some sort of artistic hobby.
Mhm.
But then I ended up getting absorbed with making jewelry. And you can only make so many pieces of jewelry before you're like, okay, I'm not going to wear 40 pieces. So what am I going to do with these? So I started posting on Instagram and got into electroforming. And it took one viral post, and that was it. People started finding me, and my hobby became a second job.
So it was a second job, and like it was actually supporting the income.
Yeah, at one point, I was working. I mean, if you took the hours I was working in the kitchen and the hours I was working on my jewelry, I barely slept because it was like I was trying to keep up with things. But I was just working. That's all I did.
Hmm.
And I still enjoyed having my jewelry business as a second job. It was never really supposed to be that. I thought maybe I'd sell it and be able to kind of support my own hobby. But then people started asking me for things. I started getting requests for custom orders. These designs started, people were waiting and for me to update my shop so they could just buy it immediately.
Right.
And it started shifting over into the jewelry aspect, and I couldn't keep up with both.
Oh, okay. I got you. Interesting. Because, so here, this kind of feeds into that because your jewelry is very much like an extension of you and your style and the way that you present yourself. You have a very unique look and a very unique style that you go through. So when you were still doing your 40, 80, 140-hour chef weeks, and you're in your whites, and then you leave that and you go into your, this is actually Lauren. Does that surprise people that knew you in that stage?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was pretty interesting because first of all, when you tell people that you make jewelry for a living, I think people think it's cute that you have a hobby. It's
Oh, yeah.
it's like that with most of the time you have any small business. I'm sure you still get it to
Oh, I
this
get it
day.
all the time. Like people just don't understand. They're like, "Oh yeah, you can just take off whenever you want to. It doesn't matter. You just make these cute little wooden things." Yeah, it's like they don't understand. Like there's a lot to it.
Yeah. So when I was still a chef, it was easier for me to tell people that I was a chef, and people could almost respect that more.
Hmm.
Instead of me being like, I make jewelry, and again, they're like, oh, do you just go to Michael's and do
Oh
all this
yeah.
stuff? And I'm like, but yeah, it's just having to explain all of it to people was definitely something that I had to like really learn how to do and kind of be a lot more confident because talking about being a chef, I was confident no matter what because it
Mm.
seemed like something that was more familiar to people.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Yeah, that's a more normal existence from the outside looking in, but from the people that are on the inside of that world looking out, it's like chefs are not normal.
no,
Nothing about us is normal.
no, they almost don't want to mess with you. They're like, all right, cool, you're a chef. And then they just like back up.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what happened. Like when I first started seeing my wife Anne Marie, I still lived in Atlanta. She lived in Chicago, and um, whenever I would meet someone new, like the people up there in the beginning, obviously I had no idea who I was or whatever. It's like, what do you do for a living? It's like, how do I explain this to people? Like, I make wooden things that hold rocks mostly, and among other things, like, what do you do? So I go with carpenter. And I was like, that's a catch-all. That's fine. They'll just leave me alone at that
Yeah.
point. But they don't because they're like, oh, do you build houses? No, that's a framer. I do not frame houses. So, oh, well, what do you do? Do you build cabinets? Sure. That's the closest you can get.
Yep.
And that's literally what I started doing was, kitchen cabinets with my dad and whatever. And he taught me, from the ground up. And like that was kind of where that started. So I'm like, well, you know what? I know how to do that. So let's just say that.
Yeah.
And then it has happened in the past before too, where like I've told someone something simplified about what you do for a living, and then they find me on the internet and they're like, that's not at all what I thought you did.
No, that happens all the time too, especially, even doing like small markets and stuff. People will look me up on Instagram and they'll be like, oh my gosh, like I didn't realize that you had like this many followers and stuff like that. And it's just like you're just sitting there like a normal human being and you're like, yeah, it's fine.
It's fine. It's whatever. Like that's just like the conversations that you have. Like uh, when anyone finds out that you've got over 100,000 followers on any platform, or even 50,000, you're at, what, like 50 something, right?
Yep.
Yeah. See, once you get to that point, actually, you know what? It's anything over like 10.
Oh,
If you
yeah.
say 10, someone's like 10,000 people look at what you do. Like that's insane. And it's like, well, from our perspective looking at it, it's not really that crazy. And when you hit a milestone, it's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
But looking at it, like you kind of get used to it. It's like, no, I'm just a normal person. Like, people, I know that people that like play in bands and travel all over the country, because I'm friends with some of them, a lot of them come back home and they work regular ass jobs.
Yeah.
Like that it means nothing. All that means is that you are able to push your market out further and find people that are interested and really want to know what you're doing. But it's just like anything else. It's sometimes I refer to that as like you're the mayor of Turd Town. Like that's like you're a big deal in this little thing, but once you step outside that circle, most people have no idea what's going on and they don't really care either. You're just another person on the street or whatever.
Yeah.
That's just like that's how it functions for me in my head, at least. Like it's, to me, it's not impressive. It's like, this is just something that I really love and I want to do it, and it's my business and my livelihood now. um, but when you started, so you said you started with the wire wrap initially, because that was a big thing in like what, 2012, 13 ish.
Yeah, I'd say 2013.
Yeah, that was when it really started to take off, and I saw these amazing wire wrap artists. But you start there and it seems like everybody branches off and goes into another direction. So where did you end up with that? Like what was the next step and where have you evolved to since that point?
So I went into electroforming.
Just
I
straight into electroforming,
Yeah,
because that's hard.
it was. And, it's funny. I've had this discussion with people. Electroforming's blown up a lot over the last, especially the last like 5 years.
Yeah.
When I started, there was nothing on it.
Mm.
I had to take these giant, like basically industrial sized directions that I found on the internet and break it down into this small little. I literally started electroforming out of a quart container.
Oh.
So it was not like a huge setup or anything like that. There were no information, there were no tutorials or anything. So it was a lot of trial and error. Now there's so much stuff on the internet. So anytime anybody is like, how do you get into it? I'm like, YouTube it. Just look it up on
Yeah.
YouTube.
Look it up on YouTube.
Yeah, but it took me a little bit to figure it out. At first, I got really frustrated, and I have a tendency when I'm not good at things to put it down because I'm like, well, this is dumb. And then I can't go back to it. I have to wait. So I actually put it down for a year
Oh, really?
and then came back and picked it up really easy, and I was able to figure it out a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And then electroforming is pretty much where I've stayed. It's what I think most people come and know my jewelry to be.
Right.
Sometimes I'll do some other mediums, but for the most part, people come for the copper jewelry.
Okay. So basically what that is you're suspending something into the solution, right? And then you put the copper plate into it and then it fuses. Is that too simple?
I mean, it's pretty much that. It's like the way that I like to tell people, because it is a little bit sciencey, is I suspend a piece in a bath of sulfuric acid.
Mm-hmm.
It's connected to copper. Slowly over time, the copper likes to stick to the parts that I've painted where I want it to conduct. And then I get the piece and then I polish it up from there. But realistically, I suspend it in the bath and I push a button and I go to bed and I hope for the best in the morning.
You just hope it looks right.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's fair. It's kind of a waiting game. It's just like anybody else. Like if someone's making pottery or some sort of sculpture, whether it's clay or polymer, they're gonna put it in the oven and just pray that it comes out in one piece.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I still make mistakes. People think just because I've been doing this, it's been consistently, this will be my 4th year doing it full time, but I've done it for a little bit longer. So we'll just say 7 years. I still mess up. People don't think that I do. And there are times where I have a whole entire collection that I have to trash.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Wow. So say you screw something up and say it has something set into it, like say you put a labradorite into something. Is it electroformed with that focal piece in it?
Yes.
So can you salvage that once, like, say the plating screws up?
Yep.
You can then salvage what's in it, right? It doesn't
Yes.
screw that. Okay.
Yeah, I can always take the cab out and stuff like that. Occasionally, though, if something isn't sealed correctly, I'll entirely destroy a piece. It's happened to me before, and it makes you want to puke for a second because you're like, that was a $120 cab, and it's trash
Right.
forever.
Yeah. That's heartbreaking. I've had similar things with other stuff I've tried to do, like with inlays and wooden inlays, and I've done stuff with epoxy. It's kind of like if you miss one step and you don't mix something correctly, or you put too much of something in there, then it's not going to work out, and you've ruined hours of your existence for that.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing too, is where electroforming can take anywhere between like 14 hours all the way up to like 38. It's like after 38 hours, you're excited, you've been working on this piece, plus the hours you put in sculpting it, to have it not be good. It's just, yeah, it's a little heartbreaking.
And you're doing all of this out of your house, right?
Yes, I am.
Is it's hard to tell. Like there's obviously like the images that I've seen in the story posts and the reels and everything. There's like you're in a space that has like a vaulted, like raw wood looking ceiling in it. Is that like your studio space, or is it all in one? Is it what is it, many square feet? Like I'm just trying to picture what this is like.
So I own a house, and it is a very strange little house. It's why I bought
that's
it.
why I asked, because it looks so unique just from the snippets.
Yeah, it's not a very old house either. So it was built to look like a barn.
Oh.
So it has this little loft at the top, which is actually bigger than my bedroom, and that became my studio. But it's nice because I get to look over my entire house because I have like the really high ceilings. So it's like I get to just watch my house, watch my dogs and stuff during the day, and be up in my ceiling making crafts.
Oh, that's cool. See,
Yeah.
that's not what I envisioned. I envisioned it being like going up like a set of stairs and then you're just up there, but you actually have a vantage point of being able to see everything
Yep.
else.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, it's hard to piece stuff together, obviously, when you only see like just a small corner or a little bit of background noise,
Yeah.
It's hard to envision that. But I think the thing that, because it seems, and if I overstep this, let me know. But a lot of times, when I'm working, especially, I'm very introverted. Outside of that, not necessarily, but when I'm working and I'm focused, I'm like super introverted. So when I do stuff, I try not to, like, if I'm making a product and I bring it, because I make my products in an outside shop that's like 20 minutes away from my house that I share with my dad, and then I bring it when it's all of it's finished, comes back home with me, and I do things in my office. But I don't like to go back out and like take product pictures and do reels and stuff, but I always want it to look interesting and fun and stuff. And I've done some of the weirdest shit, like in my front yard, in my side yard, in my backyard, my front porch. Like at one point in time, I lined up a bunch of stuff on the ground, pulled my car into my yard, stood on the top of it with my camera and held it above my head and took like an aerial photo in the middle of my front yard. And everybody thinks like I'm batshit crazy, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Like, because I know you've touched on that before too. But.
Yeah. No, I've definitely. I mean, even I like to make fun of it, but now that we are shifting into like more videos and stuff on social media, sometimes I literally put makeup on and do my hair specifically to take a clip for a minute.
Uh-huh.
And so it seems funny to me that like I'm putting in all this effort to literally do this and then do nothing else for the day. And you have this like nice top on, and realistically, I'm wearing pajama bottoms still. But then I'm outside doing all of this stuff, and might even have like, laying in the yard. I've laid in my yard and like had like my jewelry on me and stuff like that. And my neighbors, who I've lived at the same location for 5 years, and I've met them once. They have never come over, and
I
that
think
might
that's why.
honestly be why. I mean, I don't know if I would want to go over to somebody who's just laying in their yard all the time with their phone up and like doing all these crazy things. Same thing with the crystals when you're like trying to get videos of crystals. It's weird. You're doing all these weird things. It's raining, but the lighting is right, and you're out in the pouring rain, in front of a specific bush or
Oh
something,
yeah.
and cars are driving by. Yep, yeah. I'm pretty sure that's why my neighbors don't talk to me, but that's fine.
Yeah, I didn't have a relationship with like really any of my neighbors until like the most recent family that moved in next door. But I say recent, but it was a long time ago. But they at the time their children were like in high school, and so that was like the only time where I think they started like waving and stuff, because they're on the other side of the fence or whatever. The parents started waving and stuff. It's like, well, these people have like younger kids. I was still like at that point, like in my late 20s and doing these weird things. And they would probably be able to explain to their parents, like, this guy's probably not that weird.
Yeah.
Like, we do the same stuff. We're not necessarily doing it with like wood products and crystals and stuff like that. Like, that's like, what it is. Because, their kids would go outside and do like step dancing and stuff with their friends, and I didn't think that was weird. So I think that kind of like regulated, like, okay, this guy's not that strange.
Yep.
But that's just kind of because I thought I saw a post you made about recently where you went all out on your makeup and your appearance stuff, and your mom came over or something.
Yeah, I had it was I was taking a series of photos that fit with a collection, and I actually had flowers like glued onto my face, like
No.
actual
Oh, I did
flowers.
see that. I
Yeah,
saw those pictures.
and yeah, and they turned out really cool. But it's super weird when like all of a sudden you have somebody who just comes up to the house, and it's not even always like, oh, my mom stopped by. My mom's pretty much used to it at this point. There was one too where I had half of my makeup was destroyed on one side of my face. And she came in the house and she's like, your makeup's fucked up, right? And I'm like, yes, mom, thanks.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I've had delivery drivers come. Yeah, that day I had UPS show up, and I just had all these flowers on my face. I had to sign for something. And I'm like, hey, thank you. Like, not even acknowledging it, and just like shut the door and just let it be. At least I can be somebody's story for the day. I'm fine with that.
I mean, hey, better to be that than something. There's definitely something worse out there that UPS driver has seen. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, I'm sure.
That's probably the least of their concerns to a point. I hope that was the day that you got your sterling silver stuff in. And
Yes.
that was.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like a super special day, guys. Let me. Yeah. Yeah. So, but speaking of your mom, you have a very strong relate. You mention her quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
And is that something that inspires, I guess, your work? Is there anything about that? Because I know like there are some people who's like their parents inspire them in other ways, but not necessarily in their art. They inspire them in life. They inspire them in like their commitment and their, maybe their genealogy, their origins and stuff like that, but not necessarily in their art. What's the dynamic there? Like, is your mother a creative, or did somehow she push that into your psyche in some inadvertent way? Maybe no.
So first I'm gonna say like my mom, she's extremely special to me. It's been me and her, I guess, against the world since I was born. We have a very, very strong relationship. We have healed together, which is part of how our relationship is now. As far as her being artistic, she always jokes that I absorbed all of it in the womb. And actually, recently, I think you responded to the story that I had where we were making sugar cookies.
Oh yeah.
And we were doing it with a couple kids. And I thought that like the kids made this cookie because it was like god awful. It had this
Yeah.
like awful face and it was like melting. And I was like, oh, they forgot one. And my mom was like, that's mine. It's like, sorry. Um, But she's been great as far as always telling me to just go for all these things that I've wanted to do.
Hmm.
She never stifled my creativity, but at the same time, she was honest with me about things that I would have to work towards. She also, I sucked at math.
Oh,
So if I was like, yeah, trying to go into something like that, which is funny, she's super awesome at math.
oh,
But so if I tried to go into something like that, she probably would have been like, maybe we pick something else. Like she knows my strengths and my weaknesses.
okay.
But she's always been my biggest cheerleader, and I'm super appreciative of that. She's actually attended, gem shows with me. She's bought my jewelry. She doesn't just get my jewelry; she
Uh-huh.
actually buys it.
And then like you don't know, like you see an order come through and that's what it is.
Yeah, yep.
Oh,
So yeah, because anytime she's ever liked something, it's your mom. You're gonna be like, oh, just take it,
yeah.
and then suddenly she purchases it off of my website. So
Yeah. I can't say my parents have ever directly purchased anything for me because my parents are awesome. I love them to death. But like, I remember one time, my mother, I think I was in Illinois with Anne Marie's family, but she sent me a text and she's like, "Hey, my friend wants to know what your website is." And I'm like, "Mom, it's literally my name. Like it's jdrewsilvers.com." And she's like, oh yeah, yeah, that's right. Like,
yeah.
so that I understand that part of it. Like, my parents have been supportive of what I do, and even though they don't understand it, like my dad has his own creative nuances, and my mom is big in like scrapbooking and crafting and that sort of thing. But I know that I'm sure a lot of people, it's not just parents, but like a lot of people, the things that I design and I make and what I'm trying to do goes over people's heads. And, you know, I've never, so this is something that I know you did not recently, but it was last year at some point because I'm just trying to think of like the snippets that I've seen like of like the story posts that you made, and you actually posted a funny video with your friend at a festival that you did last year. And I think back to the first festival-ish thing I did. I was still making like furniture, when that was what I was doing. And I set up and I did a 2 day like festival-ish thing at it's more of like it was at like it's set up in a parking lot at a furniture store, but it was like
Hmm.
letting local artists come in and like utilize the parking lot. It was one of those. It wasn't like a magical like EDM type show, festival,
Right.
sideshow. It was one of those like, suburban whatevers. And I'd made a bunch of like tables and coffee tables and stuff, and I was mentally drained by the end, and it was the end of the last day, and I sold one thing that entire weekend, and I was like, I made it, I did it, I made it. Like that's all I needed. But then when I started doing what I'm doing now, I was like, maybe I should do festivals, and I applied to do a festival in my hometown, and I don't know who was running these festivals, but I got a reply from them that said, "We just don't think your woodworking is whimsical enough for our event, so we're going to have to decline your application." And I'm like, I don't think you understand what an art festival means.
Mm, yeah.
But anyway, so I'm a little I like going to festivals like that. I like going to art shows and farmers market type stuff that have those like off to the side. I like doing that stuff. As far as like participating on the vendor end, I can't. Like it kills me.
Yeah. I
It's,
mean, do you think now though that you have like your larger following, and if you did apply for it, do you think people would be more apt to be like, "Oh my gosh, we want him to be there?"
I don't know, maybe. I don't know because
Because I get that
you do.
sometimes. Yeah, sometimes
Okay.
I'll apply to things and it's almost it's strange because I feel like it's not because they've actually looked at like what I'm doing. It's more they just like look at my Instagram, and again back to that follower thing, and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, like we got to get this person here." They'll bring a lot of people.
Interesting. Yeah, see, I never looked at it from that direction because when I did that the other time, it was very early on.
Hmm.
I wasn't that like in I wasn't that invested into the social side of it at that point, or no one had found me yet, I guess. But um, the the video that I saw was like of your happy-go-lucky friend being happy that she was there,
Yes.
and you were just like, I don't know.
Yeah, so that's my best friend Miranda. So I've known her since I was 11 years old.
Oh,
And she's great. She is a morning person. I am not. And even like when we were kids, I don't know how she figured out how to break into my house. multiple times
Hey.
and wake me up at 8 a.m. on the weekends.
Yeah.
And so now that I'm in this setting where like sometimes I do these events, I have to get up early. They're never at night. I
Hmm.
wish they were, but they're not.
No.
So she is ready to go. Like, 7 o'clock in the morning, there she is. And she's doing all this stuff while I am begrudgingly dragging all of my stuff through whatever frickin' mud we have in Massachusetts or something. And I'm just like, it's, yeah.
But
So
but once you get past that point, like is that something, the interactions and all of that, is that something that you find fulfilling, or is it just something like it's just something that comes with the trade? It's something that comes with the territory.
I mean, I do. For me, it takes me a little bit, and I'm better at being able to interact with people
Hmm.
now versus the beginning. Like I remember, like the first few things that I did, even back to the gem shows and stuff like that. Like the first time you're like meeting people and like just being around people, you almost don't know how to act, or like you go into this little shell of yourself where you're just saying these standard robotic things.
Yeah,
So I think now I've learned that having my own personality, and even if people are like off put by it, that's fine. I don't want them buying my stuff anyway. I
of
don't want
course.
them being around. So I'm just authentically myself, and that's actually worked better for me than trying to fit cookie cutter interactions.
Yeah, and I think you have correct me if I'm wrong, but it just seems like the stuff that you do is quite detailed and unique, and it takes a lot of practice. It's not something that people just like, oh, let me set this up in my garage and do this real quick and figure it out in 5 hours. Like people walk by a lot of booths in those situations, and they're like, oh my god, you should make this, talking to their friend or whatever.
Yep.
I'm sure you get that, but in the back of my mind, when people say stuff like that to me, because I know the tools I use. I know the experience and the equipment and how diverse and all the crap that I have to put up with to get to that product stage. Do you just kind of laugh at that and you're like, go ahead?
Yeah, at this point, absolutely. I think in the beginning, when I was still like very much trying to make a name for myself, I was, a lot more defensive about
Hmm.
that stuff. Now it's like, go ahead. If you want to make it, by all means.
It ain't gonna look like that.
Nope.
No, it's not gonna look like yours.
No, and even some of the cabs I use, it's like I'm wondering, what quality they must be trying to use to like recreate it, or they think they can just like, pop on the internet and grab it. Like, go ahead. I had that custom cut.
Yeah. Yeah, people don't realize that part of it. I think everybody in that like growth period of starting out, and then something catches wind and they're like, we can do this too, and then eventually you get to the points where you've heard it so many times that you're just like, fine, do it,
Yeah.
try, because you're not going to do it the way I do it. It's not going to be as good.
Yep, yeah, they're tagging their friends who are also, artists in like the same mediums and stuff, and it's just like, I've had people even tag me and say, "Oh my gosh, you should make this," and
Oh yeah.
I've asked them to kindly delete that. Same thing. Not sure if you've had this, but I've had people send me other artists' work
Oh
and
yeah,
say, like,
all the
"Can
time.
you recreate this for me?" And I said, "Absolutely not."
Mm-mm.
You know,
No.
but that's just a disconnect I think people have on the internet, especially.
Yeah,
So
yeah. See, I'm not going to ask your age unless you want to volunteer, but I'm 37.
I'm 31, so
Okay, fair. So we're from a similar time frame, because I think there are a lot of people. This is what I call it. I call it the Napster generation. When we were all in the early stages of Napster, and then LimeWire and Kazaa and all these file sharing programs. And I think the more emo and the more like alternative you were in those years, the more you were invested into that. Like the jocks and the cheerleader types weren't necessarily
yeah.
into that as heavily, but the more like reclusive people, they're like, I can get anything I want for music on the internet. Like, I think there's a lot of those people out there that haven't realized, like, because at some point I realized, I'm like, wow, I'm literally stealing stuff from people
Oh
with doing
yeah.
this. Like, and this is hurting people. And then the more like I had a brief like few years there where I was really pursuing my music and wanted to, play on stage all the time, and, work with bands and, do that. And the deeper I got into that and started, relating to people who were recording music and paying a shitload of money to record their music. And then you'd see like someone at a show buy their album, and then their friend immediately says, hey, burn that for me when you get home.
Yeah.
And I'm like, geez, like I had that at some point, that revelation of like the disconnect between this is actually somebody's property that I'm taking without compensating them. And I think a lot of people still to this day that were a part of that generation have that disconnect, and they're just like, oh, you can copy anything you want from anybody.
Oh yeah. Well, especially when it comes down to like intellectual property, it's still, I mean, it's a very new thing that people are still kind of trying to navigate, like what actually belongs to somebody. When you post something on the internet, is it still yours? And all that stuff. I know you've had the same thing happen too with all of the random sites that pop up that just steal images, and there's nothing you can do about it.
No.
And that's an even worse scenario. But it happens constantly, especially when you're starting to get bigger on Instagram and stuff. You just have people tell you all the time, like, "Hey, I saw your product on this random website," and it's like, what are they sending these people? But I
Yeah.
still laugh at your video though when you did order that piece. That was awesome.
They got the point across because that one actually did pretty well.
Yep.
Like that was the first time I'd ever used profanity ever on my page, and I bleeped it out with a chicken.
Yep. Yeah. No, it was great. That was like hands down one of my favorite videos for sure. But it's nice because it wasn't just you proving that like your stuff was better, which was obviously the point, but it was also bringing to attention that people are buying these things that are stolen.
Yeah.
And you are actually showing them like you actually spent your own money to get this crappy, shitty version of your actual work. So it made people realize like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, of course you can go get these, shelves on Amazon and whatever for cheaper, but like there's a reason they're cheaper.
Yeah.
So it was also like good on you for bringing that to attention.
Yeah, and I wanted to do that in a funny way. Like that was kind
Yeah.
of the point. I wanted to. Sometimes I'll have these like moments, these like I can do this and it'll be really funny, but I don't think I'm that funny like in general, like overall in my daily life. I don't think I'm that funny. But then sometimes something like some spark hits my head and I'm like, this would be funny if I did this. And then I put it out there and I try to do it like you said in a way that makes a point while keeping someone engaged in it and not calling someone out for just being an asshole or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's not the point. Like because I know most people that are buying these things think they're buying the legit stuff, and I did buy that piece of garbage and it is in my garage right now because it smells like wet cigarettes and garlic.
Yep. That was my favorite line. You're like, this one smells like wet cigarettes.
Yeah, yeah. That's a very distinct smell.
Yep.
I don't know why. And I don't smoke, but if you've ever smelled a wet ashtray, like that's what it is. Like, ugh.
Yep.
But yeah, that's like just a whole can of worms. And you've told me that people have actually drop shipped your actual products through you before, right?
So I have people, this was kind of strange to find out, but you will have these websites where they steal my image and they'll put it on there and it'll be twice as much as what I would charge for it. And what they do is they wait for somebody to buy that. Somebody buys it for $400 and the person who got the 400 will then buy my necklace for, 150 and put in the customer's information and send it to them so it's still looking like it's coming from my company. So then I've had that situation happen where something maybe arrived broken or damaged and then they contact me and I don't have that order.
No.
So it's really strange and it's really tricky to navigate through like all of that stuff on the internet now. But
Yeah.
that's why, I wish they gave out like blue check marks a lot more on Instagram so that way you knew that that's exactly who you're buying from.
Yeah, the blue check marks and ads that work. That's what I would love to
Yeah,
have.
that would be great too.
Yeah, that would be fantastic because that's a fatal flaw. Like this is a whole other can of worms, but I have to put this out there. If they would charge if they would charge people to put ads on social media, that they charged the amount that was like in line with the number of followers that you have. Like if you've got 100K and you put $100 on it, then it should minimum reach say 10,000 new people.
Right.
But if your following is 200K, then that same $100 might only put you at 5,000 people. Like base it around your success, because I've experimented with that because that seems to be what they want us to do. They want us to pay for stuff, which I'm completely okay with that. Like marketing is a thing when you run a
Sure,
business.
absolutely.
But if I drop $500 on an Instagram ad and I don't get any more engagement or any more in followers than I did the week before when the ad wasn't running, why do I pay you?
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I've only experimented with ads a little bit here and there, but they've never translated to direct sales for me or
No.
new followers. I've went like pretty hard with some advertisements last year and I lost
Yeah.
more followers. So I was confused. I was like, how the fuck does that happen? I thought,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I like one time I put $100 on it because I do it every few months just to see if anything's changed. And in 5 years, it has not changed. But I put every couple months, I'll like throw $100 at it and see if this actually works. One, because they make you target it. They say like, do you want us to try to find people for you, or do you want to like kind of direct us into the kind of people we should be finding
hmm
for you? And I put $100 on it. I was like, you find the people, like you use your algorithm or whatever you think is best, and we'll just see what happens. And it was one of my most popular posts I'd done at that point. Put it out there, and I ran it for like a week or something, maybe 5 days. And then by the time it was over, there was still $30 left in the account. They didn't even use the full 100. Like it's like they just gave up and they said, yeah, that's good
they
enough.
couldn't take any more of your money for free. So they were
Yeah,
like, all right, well,
yeah.
this is all we can do.
It's like we couldn't even get it out there. Like that that's a fatal flaw in whatever system you have. Like you're leaving $30 on the table. Like you didn't do anything for me with the 70 that you took,
Right.
but you still left 30 on the table that you also could have taken without me thinking twice about it because the 70 didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So like that's just like that's like the inside part. That's like the inside struggle, and like a lot of us were so anti-video when the Reels thing came out, and it was a lot
And
of
now
us.
we're dancing around and lip syncing and doing all this weird stuff we never thought we would do. I have personas like I've made up for like specific reels now.
I've actually noticed that.
Yeah, it's I never thought I would do that. They're not like, different personalities. It's not
No,
like I wake up one day and, like the sun goddess is one that I do a lot that people recognize.
it's the crown with the little pointed towers on it, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah, and that one I usually do for like a lot of my amber pieces, but it's so weird that I never thought I would like have these different like personalities that I play on social media.
Yeah,
And I think
that's
we all are starting to do that to some extent. Like even the person that you may like be talking when you're talking on reels and stuff to your followers, you almost feel exhausted afterwards because it feels like a giant mask now that you're putting on just to be this person.
yeah. That's a struggle. I have not actually gone as far as the lip sync part of it. You're good at it. I know you probably are like like shut up. I hate that, but you're good at it. And I know that comes with like just practice. I That's one thing I have not jumped into quite yet because I can't bring myself to try.
Yeah, I mean, you should see my phone. There's about like 1,000 videos of me like screwing it up and swearing and cussing and making faces in the camera because I've just messed up everything.
Oh, you should totally do a blooper reel though.
Oh, it would be, yeah. I've thought about that, but then it's like, I've worked so hard to make these nice like personas that I'm talking about that I don't want to ruin them and be like, they're not that perfect. Like,
That no, that that's really cool that you're willing to go there. I try so hard to think of good ideas, and then you probably have the same. Like you have your fatigue where you make something and you're proud of it and you're really happy about it and you're like, this is awesome, and then you're like, I just really don't want to film a damn video right now.
yep. Or you do all that work and then it doesn't translate to anything.
Oh
So
yeah,
you've wasted an entire day of doing all of this stuff and,
yeah.
you feel defeated a
Yeah.
lot of the time.
Yeah, and it doesn't like, and I try not to rage delete anything. Like I try to leave it up there for posterity. But if I've got 137 whatever thousand followers and I stick something up there, and in 20 minutes it shows that it's been played by 200 people,
Yeah.
this has to go. I gotta
Yep.
take it down and put it up later. Like this is not working for me.
Yeah.
It's nothing makes sense. We can't make it make sense.
Well, maybe that'll be your thing for 2023 then. Maybe you can like make a new personality to showcase on your on your Instagram.
I'm gonna take a page from Lauren's book and get myself a nice crown. And can I parody you? No, I'm just kidding. I don't.
Yeah, that'll be it.
I don't have. I don't. No.
We'll
Don't.
start like a fake war on there too. I mean, the more you interact with another person and people follow stuff, it's crazy.
Can we do that? Like legit. I'm just kidding. Like I kind of want to start a feud with you
Yeah,
now,
yeah,
just to
it'll be
have that.
totally fake. Like, but yeah, no, we'll talk later.
Oh yeah, yeah, okay. Well, on that note, I think we've about hit our hour. So
Awesome.
I'm so excited and so happy that you came out to see us today and for us to record this and just to actually meet you in person instead of awkwardly at a random gym show out in the West.
Yeah, no, it was nice to not just like, go by you and just message you later on Instagram with the disconnect from social media again. So
Yeah.
I was wondering though, when we were talking earlier about like the community aspect of, where you had that in like the club setting and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and I had that too. When you went into this career,
Mhm.
and a lot of us who do work this sort of job, where you're self-employed, it's extremely isolating. So,
Correct.
how do you keep like a sense of community in like your following group or like build a community?
Okay. So this is this is such a there's so much like okay there's such a slippery slope that you can kind of go down with that, and it be taken the wrong way. But this is something that I found to be super valuable, and sometimes people do come to me for like advice about how do you do this, how do you navigate this, or whatever. Just because a lot of times it's younger people that I've spoken to that have found me through that or whatever. But they're just looking for like they see me as someone who's more experienced in like business and social whatever, and I don't see myself as that necessarily, but this is something that I found out with as far as community goes, especially since everything's on the internet now. When I started my business and I was doing mostly furniture, I was following and interacting with a bunch of other people who made furniture. And then at some point when I decided to like I was kind of networking with them, DMing them back and forth, talking like commenting on their stuff. And it's common in like every mainstream industry too of like real estate or real estate especially, but photography, whatever, anything that's more visual like that. You see like a realtor's social media page, and the only people that commented on it are other realtors.
Hmm.
And that looks like a sense of community in some ways, but I don't think that's true. And the reason I don't think that's true is because when I decided to change my medium, still being in carpentry and woodworking, but to go a completely different direction and go away from furniture and start making smaller pieces that I could ship and, crystal shelving and boxes and things like that, I removed all but like one of those people that I followed and interacted with on my social media channels. There's only one that I still occasionally talk to because he's a very genuine person. Um, because when you have a community, if you're way invested in your community and everybody's in your medium, drama is everywhere all the
Hmm.
time. Even if you say I'm not into drama, you will be pulled in at some point in that process. And if you can deal with that, okay, I can't. I can't do it. I'm not capable of doing it. I can't grow as a person if I'm involved in that. So what I mean by that is if you have a bunch of people, I've mentioned this before in other ways, but I'll get way more specific now. Like if you have people who, in your case, let's just take you. Let's take your early days. They do wire wrap jewelry. So you start connecting with other people who make jewelry that's maybe not wire wrapped, but it's something in that realm.
Hmm.
And you're in a group chat with them or something, and you're all connecting and you're all talking. And then somebody posts something, look at this amazing wrap that I did. And then 2 weeks later, one of the other people in that group that saw it, or maybe immediately after they saw it before you posted and then it went online at all, they took a hard inspiration off of it and did something very similar. So you gave people an early preview of what you were working on, which then inspired them to essentially rip you off.
Right.
And and there are healthy communities. I'm not saying there aren't. There are healthy, supportive communities, but it seems like if you're all in the same medium and you're all talking to each other, if it's not immediate or causing drama, eventually everybody in that group starts making similar things, like
Right.
very similar things. I see it a lot in like polymer artists, and I see it a lot in just sculptors, like clay sculptors. I see it a ton in jewelry makers.
Mm-hmm.
Once somebody has a concept or an idea and they show it to people that are in that immediate circle, it has the ability to like compound and just blow it up, and then everybody's making the same thing. Or everybody's trying to make the same thing, or you look at something and you're like, that's a really shitty version of what I showed you 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much as good as you could do to get to where I did mine, you know? So that's a danger in a community, because it's not just like I don't want people copying me. It's why would you want to feed into that necessarily? Because there's so many artists and creatives and creators that you can connect with that are outside of your medium, that you can bounce inspiration off of each other without stepping on anybody's toes.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
Yeah, like my friend, a friend of mine that makes stained glass, she made, as far as I know, I could be wrong, but as far as I've looked, she was like the first person that I knew of that popularized the stained glass corner spider webs that you put in the corner of your windows or
Mm-hmm.
inside your home. And I saw her do that, and I thought it was amazing. And so I reached out to her and I'm like, hey, before I take this step, I had an idea. Can I take the same concept, not exactly the same cookie cutter design, but can I make a shelf to hold crystals or whatever and put it up in the corner of, your doorway or whatever, your window, just like you did with that? Can I put my spin on it and do something in that similar feeling? And she said, yeah, go ahead, go for it. I'm not going to do that. And if she had said, no, that's too close to what I'm doing, I'm really not comfortable with it, I would have respected that and stepped back and said, fine, that's 100%. No hard feelings at all. Like, I asked permission, you said no, and that's all I need.
Yeah, so you're keeping the doors of communication open and for everybody's feelings to be respected too.
Right. And she was a stained glass person. She's not a woodworker.
Mm-hmm.
So being connected to that person is completely okay, because we're not overlapping with each other. If someone, it can be beneficial to each other because they see, oh, well, I've got this beautiful stained glass web in the corner of my window. So now I can put one in the doorway in the pass through of my house that's a shelf that can be functional too, and not just be, pretty light coming through the window. Um, and we worked it as a trade. We were like, she sent me a stained glass one. I sent her a wooden shelf version. And she's, nobody cared. Like, it was like, this is great. This is how inspiration and community is supposed to work. Versus a bunch of people getting together in a group to sculpt things, and then someone picks a theme, and then all of a sudden everybody in that group is doing the same theme because the first person's theme got really popular online. So they're like, oh, I got to do this too, because this, someone makes a whatever out of, polymer clay or whatever it is. And then everybody's like, oh, she sold out of those in like 10 minutes. And the first thing they do is go to their bench and start making something that's like super close to it or adjacent to it or whatever.
Right.
It's like, I know where that inspiration came from, and inspiration's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think you got to keep it outside of, you need to keep it outside of, the people that could use that against you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not, and most people probably, it goes back to kind of the music download, the Napster thing. Like, people don't necessarily know they're doing anything wrong until they get called out. But sometimes, no matter how gently you mention to someone as like a little nudge of like, this looks really close to what I'm doing. A lot of people's reaction is not humility. It's straight into defensive mode.
Yeah.
It's not because of this. It's not because of this. My stuff is completely different because of this. And I think it was a dangerous slope to go down. So I just choose not to.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes total sense. It's, I think it's why people like me and you have actually known each other that long on these platforms, because we do have different things, but we're, still in this like small community.
Yeah. We're not competing with each other.
Exactly.
It's just, so like, we've known each other for years, but we've, in that capacity online, which is a lot of times like, as a self-employed person, you make your connections on the internet mostly. Mm-hmm. But we've never had any like disagreement with anything or falling out, because we've removed a variable of that we will never have to deal with, because we're in the same space, but we're nowhere near the same product.
Right.
There's no possibility. There are open doors to maybe collaborate on things that work well together, but there's no possibility that anything we collaborate on would turn out to be toxic to either of us, because the opportunity is not there, because I'm not going to go electroform a cat-shaped crystal shelf that's made out of wood.
Right.
I'm not going to do that. Like, so that the community thing is super important. But if I were to ever give anyone, and I say this to everyone who's trying to start out and try to, push their art to the next level and really get traction on it, is watch out for who you interact with. The sweetest people and the nicest people and the most supportive people, it's easy enough for them to get their feelings hurt or a misunderstanding happen if you're within the same medium. If you spread it out and you're connected to people that are super creative and right on your level but making a completely different product, you'll be in a much more mentally healthy place and you'll have way less drama in your life.
Oh, that's great advice.
So I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely.
That's a lot. I have a lot to go
Yeah.
on with that. Like, I can keep going, but I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was your question for me. And I just wanted to thank you for being here today. I'm so happy that you came on and were able to talk to us for a little while.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And we're going to do it again at some point.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome. All right. Have a great day, everybody.